Now we're going to talk about these three religions very quickly. We're going to talk about Talmudic Judaism. We're going to talk about Christian insanity and Islamism. And we're not going to be disrespectful. We're going to speak about it based on what it is that it truly is at its basis, its core. Why are we continuing to deal with this three-headed dog that essentially runs everything? And you will see that up in the higher echelon brackets, when you go way up to the top of Christianity, ain't no black people. When you go way up to the top of Judaism, ain't no black people. When you go way up to the top of Islamism, ain't no black folks. That's how they separated us. They could not get the science one. They could not encumber the science all at once through this. So they split it up into three ways to control you. They gave Christianity to the house niggas, the ones that will turn the other cheek. Then when they found they couldn't keep it because the young, the pups of the Christian insanity, the pups said, no, I ain't turning that cheek no damn more. So they said, we're going to have to control those because we can't give them religion. We can't put them into the church. So they began to raise Islam over here. Now you can't mess with nobody from Islam. Those were the field niggas. Try messing with somebody who's in Islam. They'll kill you. They want to take you out. Well, that's the angst. They done gave them that. Not realizing that that's being controlled. Now you're getting, I know you're going to get mad. Get mad. But disprove while you're in your anger. Calm down, listen to what I've said, look at the facts, and see that you did not call God Jesus. Nowhere were you calling any God Allah except through Syria at the time when, previous to that, Muhammad meant one of high exalted state. Because it was on the coins long before Islam was created, of Syria. You can go into the Syriac language and see Arabic that they have now, the so-called formal Arabic, that is not the original Arabic. But of course, I'm crazy. And I'm wrong because we have believers. And that word is very, very heavy because it stymies us. It takes us out of our scientific mind. And that's where we have to start if we're going to actually solve our own problems. So, we move forward. All three religions worship Saturn. Now y'all gonna get mad at me again. Saturn is the true god of the Abrahamic triad. Those symbols you see there are the most ancient symbols for Saturn. Do all three of them look familiar? Those are the sigils of Saturn. And I'm going to show you that you're worshiping Saturn. 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 Satan. Those two are symbols and sigils for Saturn. Exactly what they're supposed to be. You see those sigils for Saturn, and you see the familiar ones that you become familiar with. But you see those who are in the know, they know how to keep the real information from you because you all don't read beyond the, fifth grade level anymore, our children. You got to go deep into the bowels where they're speaking some kind of language. The English got all kind of weird shapes to it. I know you're going to get mad at me when I'm showing you, but here goes Saturn. They keep showing you Saturn. They keep showing you Saturn, and this is the hat of the magician of the tarot.
That's right, that's right.
All three worships Satan, Saturn, and you will understand what Saturn and Satan really means. It ain't about no horn or no pitchfork. Let's get off of that. This is p.2. This is where we're going to go. We're going to take it up another notch to start challenging what you know. And sometimes it's hard because what you know kind of gets in the way and you got to burn through it with an acetylene torch because it's so encrusted in it. These are the symbols of Saturn. And you're going to see a hell of a lot more symbols of Saturn that you become familiar with. And this is what they say every day. Saturn is the Lord of the Rings. And this is what they say to him in the Vatican. In nomine Dei nostri Satanas, Luciferi excelsi, ave voluntatis canis. In the name of Satan, ruler of earth, true God Almighty, the ineffable, who has created man to reflect in thine own image and likeness. They give you Jesus. But they worship the one that keeps the money coming in their pockets. Jesus don't give you no money, but I tell you what, the damn reverend get rich. And he's worshiping Satanus. The demons or male spirits of the planets in the Kabbalah are Adonai, Evol, Sabah, Mars, Astrophi, Mercury, Eloi, Jupiter, Aruai, Venus, and Ildabaoth or Yaldabaoth or Yahweh, which is Saturn. Saturn is the ancient Chaldean language, is pronounced Satur, Satur or Satur, but written in the ancient language or the original language as 4 letters, thus Sat.ur, which factors down in the Kabbalistic gematria to S-T-U-R. And if you go into the Kabbalistic, the alphabet, and you put the numerical as well as alphabetical equation together, you will get 60 for S, T 400, U 00, which is 6, and you get R 200, and what does it come up to be? 666. Saturn is also represented by the number 6 because it was the 6th of the original 9 planets in distance from the sun. Again, this particular symbol was known to the Jews as the Khatan Shlomo, seal of Solomon, and to the Muslims as the Khatan Suleiman, which essentially is the symbol of Saturn. And you see that in Saturn, they took a picture of the North Pole or the polar region of Saturn, and they have that hexagram right there at the top. See, our ancestors knew about that for a while. Now you go to the 6-pointed star and you say, well, what does that mean? Well, you have to go into the old books to see what it means. The 6-pointed star is associated with Saturn worship, and the ancients knew it. In the book of Amos, it said in 5:26 and 27, we find, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and Chawa, Chian, Payun, Rampa, your images, the star of your God, which is made ye, which made ye the slave yourselves. That's what it says off to the edge. Now, Strong's Concordance, those of you ex-Christians, you know what the Strong's Concordance is. When you go to Strong's Concordance, if you want to find out what any word in the Bible means, it's in Strong's Concordance. So if you go to Strong's Concordance, you look up what the word Kiyun means, you see it's the image or pillar, the statue of an Assyrian Babylon god for the planet Saturn. So therefore, in the Bible, there at Amos, when they were talking about Kiyun, they were talking about your God being the planet Saturn, used to symbolize Israelite apostasy. Kiyun also represents Shiva. Also, the talisman of Saturn. This is from Paul Christian. This is an old book. I have the hardcover. It's called The Practice of Magic. The History and Practice of Magic. It says on the first page and engraved the pentagram. This is when you want to make a talisman. You have to chap out a talisman of Saturn. So the talisman of Saturn is 5 points. On the other side, a bull's head enclosed in a 6-pointed star and surrounded by letters composed the name Remtha. Remember there used to be this white woman who used to channel some kind of spirit called Remtha? Well, that's what she was hiding. She's channeling Saturn, Satan. All of them are flashing a sign, but what about that sign? Most people are not paying attention. This is often an old Jewish wall. sign made by the descendants of the Kohanim. These are the ones that were sacrificing the babies.
That's right.
The Levites, the Jewish, the high priest, the pyramid shape made by the four fingers and the thumb, emphasize the Kemetic roots inherent in most of the ancient Arabic Jewish traditions. The shape forms the letter A for Aten and Akhenaten. What am I saying? I'm saying that your whole Bible was written by those that the ancient Kemites kicked out of Kem. During the time of Akhenaten, and everybody's all flashing for Akhenaten. Akhenaten damn near tore Kemet down. Why? Because he wanted one God the way he wanted God to be, and he brought everybody in from Syria, from out of the West Hell, and say, come on, I got a new religion, we all going there, kumbaya. He said, damn Kemet, left Memphis and went and built Amarna. So he could over there strum and just pray and do what he wants. He flipped out. But y'all praising him as the one God. He's the one who we should. That's why they love him so much, because there's only one God. But guess what? When they destroyed that, when he destroyed that, he was not just destroying God. He was destroying a political system. Right. Because the gods in the temples represented the Senate, the House of Representatives, the this and the that. When you got rid of all the gods and said there's only one, I became Hitler. I went into the dictatorship. And that's when the general said, well, look, if you're going to dictate, come the hell back into Memphis and take over, because they're invading the northern borders. He said, nah, man, I'm over here feeling it. He's strumming his thing over in Amarna. And the priests that he had there, that was across the Nile in a place called Malawi, that's where you got Malawi or the Levi, the Levites. And if you read your Bible, they said that the Levites were part of the children of Israel, but they would not be counted as the children of Israel. They would just rule over them and dictate to them. So the Levites are the one that wrote your story about how bad Kemet was to you. And all these Negro Christians is picking up on that foreign mentality that was hating on Kemet. That whole religion is about hating Kemet. All three of those hate Kemet. All three. I don't understand. How is it that we could go back and look at what it is that Dr. Ben gave us? Chancellor Williams. Look back at the invasion and destruction of our people under the name of these religious gods. And we still raise those names up. That's insanity. You calling upon a God that they used on their lips while they were chopping you up, and told you if you did not convert, die. Understand, I know y'all gonna get mad, but it's gonna get even riper at the end. I know you've seen this as good Christians, because I was a good Catholic. I remember that. But did you know what that really meant? No, you didn't. Did you know that that heart was representative of the goat with the flame at the top? Did you know that the heart with the cross and the flame at the top was a symbol of Saturn? Because if you look at the outside with the cross and half of the heart, that's Saturn. And the crown of thorns is the rings. And look at your first Presbyterian church. Look at the symbol of the first Presbyterian church, family. You can be mad at me. Now let's go into another symbol. Between the 2nd and the 5th dynasties, Ra rose to become the state deity of Kem. Everything related to light and majesty was based on Ra. The Kemites divided, or the p.2, divided the year into 12 months of 3 seasons. The Aket, the Peret, and the Shamu. And each time, the inundation time, the spring and the growing time, and then the harvest time. So you deal with the Kemites had a 30-day, months, and 5 intercalary days calendar. In fact, for agricultural purposes and for determining religious festivals and the use of a different calendar based on observations of Sopedet. Sopedet was the name of Sirius. Sirius ain't got nothing to do with us. That's Greek, Roman. Sopedet, S-P-D-T, that's us. Now we're going to see where that star and crescent and why it meant so much. This is the esoteric symbol of the Holy Family. It ain't got nothing to do with the woman and the ma son and all that bullshit. Get mad at me if you want, Brother Moores. I'm here to state it to you. Stop teaching that nonsense. There's no such thing as a ma son and a woman, the female God. She was the creator, all God, and she decided to create a male. What kind of bullshit are you giving to the people? Grow up. That's nihilistic thinking. How could you say it's like cutting it off? I don't exist. Well, if you study inside and understand and understand that the female principle is cold, she is there as the ultimate potential of God, but she is activated by the masculine principle. Understand that that symbol that you see comes from that. Now everybody will say, well, see, this is God. That's all God. Mother feeding the baby. See, there ain't no man there. But see, that's why they have us the way they do. Understand that the Father has always been invisible. The Father is the principle of cause. The Mother is effect. Therefore, if you want to see the Father, the evidence of the Father is the Son, laying there nursing on the effect, as the effect through which Mother gave presence to the cause. Teach our people right. This bullshit about she created male and they didn't exist before her. Go to hell. I'm sick and tired of somebody coming back telling me that. That is insane. Why is that? Why? Because look very carefully, beloved. The Son, evidence of the Father. Why is the moon crescent in the first place? Come on in your astrology and your astronomy. Why is the moon a crescent in the first place? Somebody out there knows.
The shadow of the sun.
It's the shadow of the sun. It is the sun. The invisible sun. The evidence of the sun is shown on the mother. That is Heru. The Father is making the mother the son. The Father is making her a mother. Grow up, people. The black part is the Father, the invisible. The moon crescent is the mother, the womb, the cradle. And the Son and the evidence of both of them is the Redeemer, which is Heru. Again, the crescent moon becomes the boat that Ra, who is carried within the invisible form of Amen, the black circle of the sun, rode upon when Hapi the Nile began its inundations, signaling the time of fertility upon the land. So therefore you see Ra as another form of representation of, and of course you know in our ancestry we can juxtapose who needs to be who, depending on what symbol is. So when you deal with the boat of Ra, you're dealing with the boat itself, and the boat is always a she, yes or no? So you deal with the boat, the Amen, which is the dark circle, which is evidence of the Father there, and Ra being on the boat, showing up as the evidence of the Father. Grow up. This, of course, we already know, and we know the three phases of the moon. We see Usa, which is one of the phases of the moon that we speak about. That is essentially what we are looking at when we look at Baphomet as written and drawn by Eliphas Levi. Now, if you see this symbol, how many people are familiar with this symbol? Right. Now, have you ever noticed that there were two crescent moons on that symbol? Nobody noticed it. Nobody is picking up on it. What they're saying, it is the three phases of the moon, as talked about in Islam. And when you're looking at this thing called Baphomet, they found out that in the epistemology of Baphomet, that Baphomet came from Mahomet, and that it was actually another name for Muhammad, and that it was the ancient peoples, the Moors, who were teaching the Knights Templar the ancient secrets, and to hide it, they hid it because the goat Capricorn is the master initiator. It is where you go inside. It's where the sun goes away to go through before resurrection, before it is raised up. So Muhammad or Mahomet is where they took that Baphomet from. And so what we are looking at essentially when we see the 5-pointed star within the crescent is essentially the same thing we're looking at when we're looking at Baphomet. Now I know, again, it's going to be uncomfortable for our brothers who are in Islam, but you've got to learn this. You have to learn this. All of it is Saturn worship. Look again at the Dome of the Rock, the Masjid Kaaba, As-Sakra. Look at the top of it. Look at the circle around it. Look again carefully, because this is interesting and most people are not picking up on it. How many people saw the rings? How many people heard about the Dark Lord of Mordor? Nobody was picking up on the science around that. Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor, is an obvious interpolation of the Syrian name for Saturn, Se'ur or Sa'ur, with the On being an Ethiopic or Cushite word for light. Okay? The name Mordor is also pertinent in that it gives direct reference to the Moors and a door or gate of the Moors. Well, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about a place right now in Israel where there's a disputed ramp where they're going through all kinds of changes. But you see there the Mughrabi gate? Well, the word Mughrab, it means dirty. That's where all the garbage goes out. But they, because they want to denigrate and to bring down the name of the Moors, that's called the Moors Gate. But it's also the place where you throw shit out. That's what they say. So that's where you're looking at. Home of the Dark Lord of the Moors door. That's where it is. And down there, if you're looking at the area down around there, this is what the doors of the Moor looks like. This is the Moor's door. There, where the yellow circle is, there's a ramp that goes right there. That's called the Moor's door. That's the Dark Lord, Saturn, Sauron. There's Moor's door. They keep giving it to you in the movies. Also, if you were to look at what we showed you the last time on the Babylonian, you see a Stargate. But make sure you keep that particular image in mind, because it's going to have relevance a little later on. Also, black cubes. Does anybody know that a black cube is actually another symbol for Saturn? Well, you have them all over the place. Look in New York. All of y'all worship Saturn. Some people can't help it. They got to sleep under it. Mecca. All of it. The black cube of Saturn. Here it is again. The Tefillin. Right there on his head. He worships Saturn. You worship Saturn. If you worship any of the three gods that they gave you, find the name of your God. Think twice about calling any of the names you become familiar with, because you are empowering him. He gave you those names. Look, You think he does not worship Saturn? Everything, and that's the ones I could get in there to fit, because I could go on with 3 or 4 more pages with all of the symbols of Saturn that they worship. Even your internet, your Saturn car, the CERN supercomputer, your Earthlink, Walt Disney. On the second one, I gave you a breakdown of how Walt Disney, being an artist, gave you the pillars of Boaz and Jachin right there in his name, and the 666 of his name Disney. Remember, he was an artist, so he put in everything that he needed to put into his name when he signed his name. He signed his name like a true Satan worshiper. And there it is again. One of the top awards is the Saturn Awards. Why would they call it Saturn? Why not a Jupiter Award? Why not an Earth Award? And all of y'all, you know about mudras. Masters like yourself, you know mudras channel energies through your fingers. But did you know that the finger is a finger for Saturn? Well, all the Saturn worshippers in Hollywood know. And they keep flipping you the Saturn sign. But you think it's just, go fuck off. But everybody who knows, who's on the inside, knows that when you worship Saturn, Satan, Saturn, or Satan, you are in with the clique. And so they flash you with the sign of Saturn. Again, we're moving along. This is just a review. Again, you see, the middle finger is also connected to the middle pillar of masonry. The hex alpha, or the double murkut, which is symbolic of the temple of man and its dual nature and spiritual matter. As above, so below, feminine, masculine, together creating the hex alpha. Understand that Aleister Crowley himself wrote a whole rite around Saturn. And we're going to pick him up later on. So now we look at Saturn's faithful sitting in rings. We look at the Sanhedrin, the Khazarian Jew sitting in a ring. We got the Vatican Conclave sitting in a ring. It's the tribe of Edom, tribe of Shem. And we see the Council of Ishmael, the Council of the Senior Clerics. They're all sitting in rings. Question, do you see any y'all in there? Okay. I was just curious because my eyes are not getting so good now. Next year I'm 60, what? So my eyes, I looked, I said it might be one in there, there might be one in there, there might be one in there. No, couldn't find it. Yes, beloved brothers and sisters, I don't care what you call them, Arab, Jew, Christian, Edom, Shem, and Israel are closer than you might think. And as for us, no. So let's go to the book of Nahum. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put Labim were thy helpers, yet she was carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children were also dashed to pieces at the top of the streets, and they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her men were bound in chains. This is you. I don't see you in a high council. I see you maybe tribes, but I see also that they're about to consolidate your tribes. They're about to take your tribes and they're about to put them into a non-governmental organization. Whoa, what do you mean by that, Brother Valentine? Well, we're going to get into that. This was part 2. What was part 2? It was called Materializing the Vision. This was day 1, part 2. Or day 2, part 1. And what were we talking about? Now let's get deep. And here's my brother, Polite. He opened the way about melanin. And what did I say melanin was for the longest period of time? Well, melanin is a light code superconducting molecular lattice for human, natural human consciousness transcendence. What do we mean by that, Brother Valentine? Well, let's get into the science. Understand that vehicular consciousness, that's what you are. You are a biological vehicle. So when I say vehicular consciousness, for those of you who are my students, you know that anything that has a consciousness that moves on either 2 legs, 4 legs, 6 legs, 2 fins, or 4 fins. Modes of consciousness find ways to become locomotive. True consciousness encapsulated within form find ways for locomotion. The wing is a way of locomotion. The hoof is a way of locomotion. Each one consolidates a specific quantum of consciousness that is there to keep the balance of the planet in place. So the buffalo on the hoof has a specific reason and a specific duty by its own consolidation of atoms to be there at that time, to keep the balance out of the planet. Just like all other animals on the planet have a quantum chip within them that triangulates cosmic energy to keep the equilibrium and the flow of the planet. So vehicular consciousness operating on 3rd density level of being and perception is primarily photonic. What do we mean? It means it's based on light. Okay, the white light spectrum of electromagnetism. There are higher and lower levels of consciousness and perception beyond all light, but we will elaborate on that subject matter more fully at another time. A photon is an elementary particle, a quantum of electromagnetic interaction, and the basic unit of light, as well as all other forms of electromagnetic radiation. It is also the force carrier of electromagnetic force. So it is the force carrier as well as the light itself. Like all elementary particles, photons exhibit wave-particle duality. In other words, they exhibit properties of both waves and particles. For example, a single photon may be refracted by a lens or exhibit wave interference with itself, but also act as a particle, giving a definite result when quantitative momentum is measured. Photonic perception is thus light particle-based interactive perception, in that light is the basis of all organic life at the cellular, molecular, atomic levels of 3rd density material being. Now, I am speaking on a whole other level because consciousness and metaphysics is a language. You can learn metaphysics and understand what I'm saying at the deeper levels if you knew how these consolidated words moved together to make perception. So when you come to our school, you learn a new language, which is how to identify the causal realm. What to do with your mind to change the language so that you can identify that which is unidentifiable. So you see me working with the so-called English language in order to try to circumscribe the invisible realm, to try to nail jello to the wall, to try to give you some kind of symmetry to the consciousness. And we're going to get even deeper.